In the summer of 2002, more than 300 religious leaders and scientists, as well as environmentalists and policymakers, boarded a ship in Corfu, Greece, for a symposium centering on the Adriatic Sea. This distinguished group, representing different religions, nationalities, organizations, and diverse points of view, joined together for a 6-day voyage. This symposium was the fourth in a series on our marine environment under the auspices of His All Holiness, the Ecumenical Patriarch Bartholomew.
The present conference constitutes part of a series of similar symposia, during which the environment, and especially that which is connected with rivers and seas, is examined from the points of view of its present as well as its ideal conditions, on the basis of both religious principles and scientific precepts. This year, our exploration probes more deeply into the environmental ethos that determines our attitude toward the environment.
Previous symposia examined the Aegean Sea, the Black Sea, and the Danube. Leaving Corfu, the symposium began in Albania in the south and moved up the coast to Kotor in Montenegro, Split in Croatia, Koper in Slovenia, Ravenna in Italy, and finally Venice, where the Pope and Patriarch were to sign a joint commitment on the environment.
Sailing along the Adriatic coast, a geographical area of immense cultural significance as well as enormous environmental problems. It is precisely in an area like this that the question is inevitably raised in our minds. Why and how has humankind reached such a deplorable situation? How is it possible that the same human being can create an admirable culture and destroy their natural environment at the same time? Religion and science cannot evade this question, for they share a great deal of responsibility, both for the appearance of this lamentable situation and for finding ways to correct it. We, religious leaders and leading scientists, are gathered here precisely for this purpose.
Talking about the history and political ecology of the Adriatic Sea.
This unique gathering of scientists and religious leaders, so often poles apart in their world views, focused on two issues. On the practical side, the specific environmental problems of the Adriatic and potential solutions. On the more theoretical side, the theme of environmental ethics.
But there is also sin against nature.
Day one scheduled a trip to Butrint in Albania, a country long isolated from its neighbors and the world, a country formerly ruled by a repressive regime which left only a legacy of poverty and dysfunction. The ruins of the ancient city of Butrint present numerous issues about what constitutes healthy tourist development in a healthy environment.
Tourism, where we are, tourism is the biggest threat for us. The area there is extremely valuable for tourism development, and any government will be interested to develop that area to produce jobs for the people and votes for the politicians. The problem is that by destroying Butrint and their area, you'll destroy the area forever, and in the long term, you're not going to attract people to that particular site. So I think it is very important that all this group of people, come to Butrint, here, and all the press that this is going to get. So he's going to start making people think that it is important because you have all these important people coming and talking about preserving the area.
The Patriarch was joined by Anastasios, Archbishop of all Albania. One woman said it was the most important day of her life, the day of the Patriarch's visit.
So the history of Butrint was basically a history of man and the seas over the last 50,000 years. The city has grown and contracted and grown again as it's managed to deal with the water around it. So it's a long history of being a port on the Adriatic that was right in the heart of the Mediterranean through early, late Greek times, Roman times, early Byzantine times, up until the Ottomans conquered this area and then basically cut off the Balkans from the Christian West. So it's an interesting story between the sea, the lake, and the land.
This Christian chapel dates from the 6th century AD. Here, a spontaneous show of respect to a tradition where ancestors some 15 centuries ago practiced the same faith. Porto Romano is an environmental disaster. Chemical factories that produce pesticides and other toxic chemicals were abandoned in 1990. The toxic waste was simply left on site in dumps and storage areas.
It seems to me that there's a huge number of families at great risk from contamination from both lindane, but more immediately from chromium-6, which is a cancer-causing agent.
If you see by eyes that the color is yellow, it's chromium-6.
It gets into the water supply for quite a wide area and is washed into the sea, which is only a few hundred yards away, and is in the fish, and the fish are eaten all over Albania, so people do not know they are being poisoned.
A groundwater sample shows cancer-causing chlorobenzene levels 4,000 times the acceptable level for drinking water. A sample of milk from a domestic cow showed beta-HCH concentrations 100 times higher than acceptable European Union levels.
Well, the problem is that there is not even the funds to do a proper health study. The studies that have been done show that some of the children have skin problems as a result of contact with lindane and chromium, but the real long-term danger is how much there is in the bloodstream and the cancers this will cause in later life in kidneys and in the liver.
And certainly considering that this area is becoming more and more populated by people that are leaving the remote mountainous areas because they have no money and no other incomes to live there, and they are trying to come here because they know that the coastal area is and the sea is a new opportunity for them. They want to discover. Some of them are desperately trying to survive here.
In 1996, I have bought this area, this building.
But you knew it was very polluted.
Yes,
very dangerous.
I know, but it was not possible for me to buy something else.
Oh.
And now I have made this laboratory for the buildings, for the construction products.
Do you live here?
No. Here we only we work here. not.
You don't live here.
So these are really tough issues and a good example when you have to deal with both environmental and social economic problems at once.
The United Nations Environmental Programme, UNEP, recommended an emergency response that would strictly prohibit access to the site, resettle all citizens living on or near the site into adequate housing, immediately store the chemicals at a secure site, and clean up the area.
And what is being done about it?
Well, nothing. At the moment, nothing is being done about it, and I think it's a lack of funds. There's certainly the expertise here. The people from the Juras University are aware of the problem and they know how to tackle it, but they just have no money. And it's a terrible difficulty because if they had the funds, they could save a lot of lives.
An important aspect of the symposium was that at each stop, local experts, activists, and political leaders boarded the ship and joined in the discussions. Here, the president of Albania, after having addressed the symposium, answers questions from the press.
Yes, can I ask a question? Paul Brown from the Guardian newspaper in London. I came here and saw the lindane and the chromium-6 dumps, and the experts I spoke to were very disturbed that the government has so far taken no action to do anything about it, and I wondered if you could tell me what the situation is.
The government is interested to develop this project, but financially there are a lot of restrictions. Particularly the budget of this year is more restricted than the budget of a year ago.
I realise that it's a very expensive problem to solve.
Yes.
But there is a simple thing that could be done, which the entire site could be simply fenced off.
No, it's not a question of the fence. Well, you don't simplify the problem. No, because the poison is there. And yes. If you put the fence, the poison could be in underground and could be spread. So no, it's the same thing.
But the point the experts were making, Mr. President, was
no, I don't believe on the fence. I don't believe on a great support and to resolve the problem, because if you have a local infection, it doesn't mean that this will be localized all the time.
No one's suggesting that's the total answer, Mr. President, but suggesting a way of stopping more people being
I answer the question.
Other questions?
The press was a very important element of the symposium. The local media were there in force, which enabled them to publicize issues of the environment in their own countries. The international media on board reported on specific issues, in addition to the trip as a whole. As would be evident as the trip progressed, each country both shared the same problems and presented differences. Albania has had a very particular history.
Communism has made of nature and of the environment the space of the enemy, in a sense that having made of the old property a state property and being a so brutal regime, communism has made of nature something that was not anymore part of our own property as individuals, as humans. So it has created a big gap between nature and humans. And once communism broke down and people passed from collectivism to individualism, we had to experience
the wildest attack to the nature. Thousands of trees were cut, and thousands of meter square of land were occupied to build illegally, and hundreds and thousands of meter squares of green space in the cities were destroyed because everybody wanted to have something from this big enemy's property. And now we are entering a phase of rebuilding the communication between people, between humans and nature. So this is the challenge. How to make of the public space something that is perceived not as the other's space, but as our space. And in this, everybody can play a role, but it's not easy.
The ship traveled up the coast to Montenegro and the port city of Kotor. Heading into a narrow and unpredictable channel, nature's welcome was a fierce headwind, the Bora. A wind that would have been both feared and appreciated by ancient mariners, but one that modern technology and the captain's skill dealt with smoothly and precisely. The symposium arrived to a rousing welcome in this old city. Founded by Greeks, many empires throughout the centuries have battled for control of Kotor. Romans, Byzantines, Slavs, Venetians, Hungarians, French, Austrians, each leaving their mark. The Patriarch visited the Orthodox cathedral and also attended a special ceremony here in the Tryphon Cathedral. This Roman Catholic church was built as a three-nave Romanesque basilica in 1166. The church is an important repository of historic and sacred artifacts. Here, the Patriarch replies to the warm fraternal greetings of his hosts, Roman Catholic Montenegrin prelates.
Χαίρομεν πληροφορούμενοι από τον αδελφόν Αμφιλόχιον ότι οι σχέσεις
Exposure to depleted uranium brings a potential risk of cancer. The main danger comes from inhalation of depleted uranium dust and from the external beta radiation. On May 30, 1999, during the Kosovo conflict, NATO aircrafts attacked Cape Arsa. They fired 480 rounds, and it is supposed that 300 or 400 of them were with anti-armor penetrators made of depleted uranium. This means that the Cape Arsa was contaminated. They found a radiation level at Arsa up to 50 times higher, and the uranium concentration in soil up to 100 times higher than the local natural maximum. I feel it's my duty to raise the question: is the use of depleted uranium ammunition immoral? And I will answer immediately, in my opinion, it is. It is very, very immoral.
what you do to the animals, to the trees, to the air, the earth, the water. If you misuse them, this too is sinful.
As religious leaders and scientists, we must go deeper into the issue. We must be ready to propose not simply an ethic, but an ethos, and to root our ethical demands deep in human existence and not simply in human behavior. We must be prepared to ask not simply how people should behave, but why they must behave so.
Environmental ethics is built on an environmental ethos. And what that really means is that you have to develop a feeling for the environment in order to go out there and design a code of behavior which will allow people to respect it and to use it, not just to respect it, to use it in a way which is appropriate for other people and for all of the other beings on the planet.
People relate to their environment and form their attitudes to it long before they acquire an ethical conscience. It is on this soil that environmental ethics can grow and bear fruit.
I feel that what was really important in what he said was the concept of ethos, which is precognitive ethics. What a child feels when they see a tree or a nature, some sense of communion, which is instinctive and not mental. And to me, that's the key, is like, how do we recover that feeling of respect and awe?
Modern Western man understands only the language of values and has lost almost all organic contact with nature. People grow up without having touched or even seen a lamb or a donkey. So why feel an organic relationship with them?
That's a big challenge today. How can you love what you do not know? How can you care for something that you have never seen? So that's another aspect of a religious obligation, I would say, to put young people in contact with nature so that they may learn the seriousness of the situation and also to love, because what you love you do not destroy.
Why is it, when we know so much about matters like climate change and the extinction of species, why is it, when we know so much, does so little change? Why is knowledge so often met with inertia? Our generation relates to the cosmos in a way that is frankly autistic. There seems to be a lack of awareness or recognition which causes us to waste the beauty of the world. The crisis we face is not, au fond, most profoundly an ecological crisis. It is a crisis of awareness, the way in which we are in the world. We're not dealing with any inevitable conflict between science and religion. We're dealing with a way of being in the world which is out of sympathy and communion with the creation. And this lack of sympathy is manifested in symptoms of ecological distress.
Right from the very beginning of modern science in the 17th century, the separation of the purpose of science, seen as knowledge and above all power over nature, this separation from ethics and wisdom was made explicit right at the beginning. Scientists participated in a pure pursuit of knowledge and power that was itself morally innocent. Scientists have persisted in that belief ever since. It means if things go wrong, if scientists invent things that cause appalling pollution, hydrogen bombs that kill people, then they're not to blame. It's politicians, corporations, or other people whose fault it is. They're just involved in the innocent pursuit of truth. It's precisely the environmental crisis, largely caused by science and technology, that are forcing science and technology to change.
many scientists would have gone on unperturbed if it hadn't been for this crisis. I think it's precisely this crisis acting back on science which is compelling us to search for a new kind of wisdom and move beyond the old kind of apparently value-free knowledge, the ideology on which science has been based for so long.
Science is evolving. Science is not fixed. It's amazing how much we look at our work holistically, and we're ready to see our field of thought evolve and change, and we're ready to discard ideas that don't work anymore. So my challenge to the religionists is, can you come near that record of being willing to give up ideas that don't work?
In our society, sadly, wisdom is no longer valued. So I think here is where religion and science can get together, explore the very basis of our values, and put wisdom back along at the top of the list where it should be and should have been all the time.
The next port of call was the historic city of Split in Croatia. Tourism, reduced to near zero in the war years, is now on the rebound. Here, in the heart of the city, is the palace of the Roman Emperor Diocletian, built at the end of the 3rd century AD. During the wars which broke up Yugoslavia, environmental concerns were not on the agenda. Today, these new states must create institutions and a consciousness to deal with their very real environmental problems.
As we've seen on this trip, in the Adriatic, right on the edge of the Balkans, as we were reminded that these religious institutions here have been very, very weak in the past, and one of the reasons for the political chaos and destruction that's occurred, it was the very weak religious institutions. Now maybe these institutions have learned from that experience, are regenerating and re-engaging themselves and becoming, therefore, much more engaged in the new challenge, which is clearly the ecological challenge.
The symposium then sailed up the Dalmatian coast to Koper in Slovenia. Slovenia, independent since 1991, is the most prosperous of the former Yugoslav republics. The Postojna caves, the largest in Europe, are a natural tourist attraction, and they present the dilemma dealt with in the symposium. How can you have a healthy tourism, one that is open to all and still preserve the attraction? For here in the depths of the cave, the very breath of visitors permanently degrades what they have come to see. The ship departed Koper to cross the Adriatic to the port of Ravenna in Italy.
Yeah, but I mean, you could, if you were to let it be known that you weren't willing to give your name.
Some of the most productive work of the symposium took place outside the formal plenary meeting.
So how much does a tree, an 8-foot tree, cost? So he doesn't need little trees, he needs 8-foot trees, right? Not 8 foot, taller than you are. He needs 8-foot trees. If I got 1,000 trees to put in the park, I'm looking good, right? So how much does a tree, an 8-foot tree, cost?
All the evidence indicates from the scientists and from the contributions that we've received that the main source of the pollution of this sea is Italy. Italy, a sophisticated culture, one of the founder members of the European Union, with impeccable environmental laws, with all the majesty of the European Union's legislative power, and yet the pollution continues, and that is a problem of enforcement. You can have the most beautiful laws you like, but if they're not enforced, you still continue to pollute the sea.
If the Vatican really took the matter of the environment seriously, they would have a lot of resources to put pressure on Milan, the city of Milan, which is the single largest polluter of the Adriatic Sea. And just they are the only large city around this area which does not have any sewage treatment facilities. And these are millions of people. In fact, they are the largest polluter not only of the Adriatic but of the whole Mediterranean. And so I imagine the Vatican could have a lot to say about this and could have a lot of action, but are they going to have it?
For the first time, we are seeing that religious leaders are getting involved in the issue of the environment. And that could probably be the key of our survival.
Santa Apollinare in Classe, in Ravenna, is considered the most impressive example of the early Christian basilica. Despite centuries of plunder and the division between Western and Eastern Christianity, between Rome and Constantinople, the beauty of the original concept has been preserved in the mosaics. For the artists, these mosaics portray God's creation, what today we call our environment. It was for this reason that Santa Apollinare was chosen for the symposium. In an ecumenical spirit, an Orthodox liturgy was scheduled in the context of the symposium. The last Orthodox liturgy celebrated in this magnificent basilica was 1,263 years ago. Once again, the walls would resound with the voices of Byzantium.
I was deeply moved. I think most people there were deeply moved. I mean, after all, we were sitting in this remarkable church with a fantastic mosaic dating back to the Byzantine period, and I really believe that the fact that an Orthodox service had not been held there for centuries is something that we all sense, that it was an extraordinary, remarkably rewarding event, which symbolized perhaps more than anything else the coming together of religions. Now, a lot more needs to be done, but I think the fact that it was there, that it was the ecumenical Patriarch who conducted the liturgy, the service, and that all these prelates were there, and that it happened to be in Ravenna, which was such an important city. It had more than a symbolic meaning. I think it brought us all together, and that's the kind of spirit that needs to prevail in the future, not only during the symposium, but in general.
On this meeting, I like religion. I am not a religious man, I'm not a priest, but nevertheless, someone new came to the problem of science and in the environment. And that's a very big thing. That's a very big thing, because on a global level we realize that we should unify all our efforts in the benefit of mankind.
If we really loved our neighbors' children the way we love our own, we would not stand for a second for what's going on, and of course we aren't standing for it, but I mean the movement would spread like wildfire if people loved their neighbors' children. What we think is okay for other people's children is so unthinkable for our own that it makes us almost crazy. We have to love other people's children.
And the West may be faced with very different challenges when the poor majority lose their patience with us and decide, as the book of Revelation warns, that the time has come for destroying those who destroy the earth.
I hope that this symposium will send a clear message to the whole world that we are all in the same Noah's Ark regardless of our faith, nationality, ethnicity, philosophical or political views, and therefore we will be all saved or all failed on this planet Earth.
That night, the ship, the Festos Palace, left Ravenna and set course north to Venice. It passed the Po River, pouring the filth of an advanced and prosperous society into the Adriatic. Venice, wedded to the sea, was once a great maritime trading empire at the center of events which shaped the relationships of the worlds of Islam, Orthodoxy, and Catholicism. This magnificent city, one of the great monuments to human creativity, stands as a perfect summation of the questions raised by the symposium. Dealing with the pollution of its waterways and wetlands in the Venice Lagoon, and constantly striving for a healthy tourism, Venice is gradually drowning as sea levels inexorably rise. While ingenious engineering solutions have been proposed, they could be only a temporary respite if the root causes of global warming and pollution are not properly addressed. Local problems, global causes. Again, if we know so much, why don't we act, do more? Where is an environmental ethos? The closing ceremony took place at the Palazzo Ducale, where the Venice commitment was to be signed by His Holiness Pope John Paul II via TV from the Vatican, and the ecumenical Patriarch Bartholomew.
We greet again and again, fraternally and wholeheartedly, His Holiness Pope John Paul II, our elder brother, and we thank him for the joint signing of the text on environmental ethics.
We're gathered here today in the spirit of peace for the good of all human beings and for the care of creation.
The Venice commitment was read by Mark Malloch Brown, the head of the United Nations Development Program.
We do not expect every person and every institution to assume the same burden. Everyone has a part to play, but for the demands of justice and charity to be respected, The most affluent societies must carry the greater burden. We commit ourselves to respect the views of all who disagree with us, seeking solutions through open exchange without resorting to oppression and domination.
As we come to the close of our fourth symposium on religion, science and the environment,
The Patriarch, with Cardinal Echegaray of the Vatican at his side, spoke and gave, perhaps in one word, the key answer to the questions raised in the symposium.
and this word is sacrifice. This exactly is the missing dimension in our environmental ethos and ecological action. We often refer to an environmental crisis, but the real crisis lies not in the environment, but in the human heart. The fundamental problem is to be found not outside, but inside ourselves, not in the ecosystem, but in the way we think.
Oggi sono con piacere di unirmi a lei per questo atto significativo.
The Pope greeted the symposium with words of thanks and support. He then signed the commitment. May 2003. A number of practical measures emerged from the symposium. Perhaps the most notable was a solid waste management project that got going as a result of the symposium. And remember that discussion about trees in Tirana with Tim Worth of the United Nations Foundation in Washington and Eddie Rama, the mayor of Tirana? The appropriate trees are on their way. And Porto Romano, that toxic hotspot in Albania, visited by journalists from the symposium?
It's now been the subject of a very large World Bank investigation and grant, and is now being cleaned up. One could argue that that would never have happened if the symposium hadn't visited the place and embarrassed the President into taking some action.
And the Pope later said, signing the Venice Commitment was his most important act of the year.
How is it possible that the same human being can create an admirable culture and destroy their natural environment at the same time?
Someone new came to the problem of science and the environment, and that's a very big thing.
Our generation relates to the cosmos in a way that is frankly autistic.
If we really loved our neighbors' children the way we love our own, we would not stand for a second
For the first time,
for what's going on.
we are seeing that religious leaders are getting involved in the issue of the environment. And that could probably be the key of our survival.
Faced with very different challenges, when the poor majority lose their patience with us and decide, as the book of Revelation warns, that the time has come for destroying those who destroy the earth.
I hope that this symposium will send a clear message to the whole world that we are all in the same Noah's Ark regardless of our faith, nationality, ethnicity, philosophical or political views, and therefore we will be all saved or all fail on this planet Earth.